The air at Blackwood Manor was so thick with humidity you could almost drink it. 90 degrees in the shade and the cicadas were screaming loud enough to drown out the string quartet. I stood near the hydrangeas, nursing a glass of lukewarm champagne, watching 300 people pretend they were not sweating through their silk and linen. My mother Susan stood at the head of the long table under the marquee tent, tapping a silver spoon against her crystal flute. The sound cut through the chatter like a sniper shot. Everyone turned. My father James stood beside her, looking presidential in his tailored suit, though I noticed his smile did not quite reach his eyes. It was tight. Strained. To Ashley, my mother announced, her voice projecting perfectly without a microphone. She raised her glass toward my younger sister, who was glowing in a white lace sundress that probably cost more than my car. Our shining star. The first of our daughters to truly settle down and build a life we can be proud of. A ripple of applause went through the crowd. I felt the familiar prickle of heat on my neck, but I did not move. I just watched. Ashley beamed, clutching the hand of her fiancé Ryan, a venture capitalist with a jawline that could cut glass and a personality to match. Ashley has always known what she wanted. Susan continued, her gaze sweeping over the crowd, soaking up their admiration. She is driven, focused. She does not waste time on distractions. And today, as we celebrate her engagement, I can finally sleep soundly knowing one of my girls is taken care of. The implication hung in the humid air, heavy and undeniable. One of her girls, not both. Then she turned. Slowly. Deliberately. Her eyes locked onto me across the garden. The guests followed her gaze, 300 heads turning in unison. I felt like a specimen in a jar. Hannah, she said, her voice dropping into that pitch of performative pity she had perfected over 2 decades. Do not worry, sweetheart. Your time will come. I know it is hard watching your little sister beat you to the altar, but we have not given up hope for you yet. When are you going to stop playing with blocks and find someone to build a real life with? The silence that followed was absolute. Even the cicadas seemed to pause. I saw the pity in the eyes of my cousins, the smirk on Ashley's face, the way my father studied the bottom of his glass, refusing to look at me. They expected me to blush, to stammer, to make a self-deprecating joke about being married to my career as a structural engineer. They expected the Hannah they had trained, the quiet fixer, the one who absorbed the cracks in the foundation so the house would not fall. But the Hannah they knew did not exist anymore. She had died 8 months ago, standing in an empty church. I took a sip of my warm champagne. I did not smile. I did not look away. I held my mother's gaze until I saw a flicker of uncertainty cross her face. 8 months ago, I said. My voice was not loud, but in the dead silence of the garden it carried. What? Susan blinked, her perfect mask slipping. You asked when I was going to build a real life, I said, my tone level clinical. I did. 8 months ago. I got married on November 12th. Drop a comment below, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? I want to see who is with me on this journey. The garden went quiet. Not the respectful silence of a toast, but the suffocating vacuum-sealed silence of a room where all the oxygen had just been sucked out. Susan laughed. It was a brittle, glassy sound that shattered against the humidity. Oh, Hannah, she said, her smile tight enough to snap. You always did have such a vivid imagination. Eloping in secret, just to spite us. Honestly, darling, that is a little dramatic even for you. If you wanted attention, you could have just asked. My father James chuckled nervously, looking at his business partners as if to say, Kid's right, let's not do this now, Hannah, he warned, his voice dropping an octave. We have guests. Do not make a scene. A scene. That is what they called my life whenever it inconvenienced them. I did not look at the guests. I looked at my mother. I watched the way her fingers clenched the stem of her glass, turning her knuckles white. She was not confused. She was calculating damage control. I did not elope, I said. My voice was steady, flat, devoid of the tremor they were hoping for, and it was not a secret. I sent the invitations 8 months ago. February 14th. FedEx priority overnight. Tracking numbers ending in 552 and 553. I recited the numbers from memory. I did not need to look at my phone. I had stared at those delivery confirmations for 3 days straight back in February. Delivered to the front porch at 10:15 a.m. I continued. Signed for by a resident. Ashley let out a scoff, loud and incredulous. You expect us to believe you sent invites that magically vanished. Please. You probably addressed them wrong. You always were careless with details. Careless. Me. The structural engineer who calculated load-bearing limits for suspension bridges. I felt a familiar heat rising in my chest, but I did not let it reach my face. Instead, I let my mind drift back to that day in November. The day I stood in a small chapel in Vermont, wearing a dress I bought off the rack because I could not afford the custom silk Ashley was currently sweating in. I remembered the smell of the old wood pews, the way the light filtered through the dust motes, and I remembered the 2 empty chairs in the front row. I had placed reserved signs on them. Mom. Dad. I had painted them myself. I stood at the altar for 45 minutes, delaying the ceremony, checking the door, checking my phone, waiting for a text, a call, a car to pull up. Nothing. Caleb had taken my hand then. His grip was warm, solid, anchoring me to the earth when I felt like floating away. "They are not coming, Hannah," he had whispered. "But I am here." I did not cry that day. And I was not going to cry now. Back then, I had wondered why I did not call them. Why I did not scream at them the next day. Why I let 8 months of silence stretch between us like a suspension cable pulled to its breaking point. For a long time, I thought it was cowardice. But standing here in the oppressive heat of the garden party, watching Ashley smirk and my mother rewrite reality in real time, I finally understood. It was not cowardice, it was accounting. Relationships are transactions. We trade love for loyalty, support for respect. But my family had been overdrafting my account for 29 years. They took my compliance and gave back criticism. They took my achievements and handed them to Ashley to wear like costume jewelry. When they did not show up to my wedding, I did not go bankrupt. I simply stopped funding their lifestyle. I realized then that silence isn't always submission. Sometimes silence is an investment strategy. Every day, I did not call them every week. I let them believe I was still the lonely, pathetic spinster playing with blocks. I was letting the interest compound. I was letting the debt grow. I looked at Ashley secure in her golden bubble. I looked at my father sweating in his suit, terrified of anything that might crack his perfect facade. I had spent 8 months accruing interest on their cruelty. I had let the principal build and build until the debt was so large it could no longer be paid with a half-hearted apology or a hug. They thought my silence was peace. They were wrong. My silence was a lien against their happiness. And today was the maturity date. "I was not careless, Ashley," I said, taking a step closer to the head table. "I was precise. I have the delivery logs, I have the signature, and I have the video." The air in the garden shifted. The humidity seemed to spike. "Video?" Susan asked, her smile finally faltering. "What video?" "The one from your security cloud," I said. "The one you forgot I set up for you." "Security cloud?" Ashley laughed, but it sounded wet like a cough. She waved a manicured hand in the air, dismissing the threat as if it were a gnat. "You have not lived in that house for 5 years, Hannah. You do not have access to anything. God, you are so desperate. Is this because Ryan did not want you? Is that what this is? You are trying to ruin my engagement because you are jealous?" She looked around at her friends, her bridesmaids, seeking their validation. They nodded on cue, a chorus of bobbing heads in pastel chiffon. "Mail gets lost all the time," Ashley added, her voice gaining strength. "Packages get stolen. You are making a conspiracy out of a clerical error." Then my mother joined in. "And this was the master class." Susan did not get angry. She crumbled. Her lower lip trembled. Her eyes filled with tears that hung perfectly on her lashes without ruining her mascara. She pressed a hand to her chest right over her heart, as if I had physically struck her. "Hannah," she whispered loud enough for the first 3 rows of tables to hear. "Why are you doing this? Why cannot you just let your sister have her moment? We have done everything for you. We have loved you. And you come here to this beautiful celebration, and you throw these lies in our faces." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. Poor Susan. Such a difficult daughter. I watched her fascinated. For years, I had thought my mother was a liar. I thought she knew the truth and chose to speak the opposite. But standing there watching the genuine anguish on her face, I realized I had been wrong. It was not lying. It was something far more terrifying. It was the narcissist's amnesia. I analyzed her face like a structural anomaly. See, for Susan, truth was not a fixed point. It was flexible. It was fluid. It bent to serve her narrative. If an event did not center her, if it did not make her look like the benevolent matriarch or the tragic victim, then in her reality that event simply did not happen. My wedding did not have an audience of 300 people for her to perform in front of. It did not have a toast where she could brag about her parenting. Therefore, my wedding did not exist. She was not pretending to be confused about the invitations. She had genuinely deleted them from her reality because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging she had failed. And Susan Blackwood never failed. It was a psychological rewrite of history happening in real time. She had edited the file of her life, and I was the glitch she was trying to patch. "We never got them," she sobbed, leaning into my father for support. "I swear on my life, Hannah. If we had known, we would have been there. How could you think we would not—" My father, James, was not crying. He was scanning the crowd. His eyes darted to the VIP table near the back, where Robert, the key investor for the Veritas acquisition, was watching with a frown. James stepped forward, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. His grip was tight. "Warning." "That is enough," he hissed, his voice low and lethal. "You have made your point. You are upset. We get it. But you are making a scene in front of people who matter. People who can buy and sell you. Now you are going to apologize to your sister, you are going to sit down, and you are going to smile. Or, so help me God, Hannah, you will be cut off from this family before the sun goes down." He thought that was a threat. He thought the threat of exile was the leverage that would snap me back into alignment. I looked at his hand on my shoulder. Then I looked at Ashley, who was smirking behind her champagne glass, secure in the knowledge that the golden child never burns. They thought this was a negotiation. They thought if they applied enough pressure, I would fold just like I always did. But you cannot break a structure that has already been condemned. I did not shake his hand off. I did not scream. I just reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. "You are right, Dad," I said, my voice calm, cutting through the humidity. I should not make a scene. I should let the evidence speak for itself. I opened my messages. I found the thread with Caleb. I typed one word. "Now." The message status changed from sent to read in less than a second. I slipped the phone back into my clutch. I did not look for Caleb. I did not need to. I knew exactly where he was parked in a nondescript van, 3 streets over, bypassing the event server's firewall with the same casual ease most people use to order a pizza. Behind the head table, looming over the garden like a monolith, stood the 20-foot LED video wall. My parents had rented it for 5 figures. It was supposed to play a looped montage of Ashley and Ryan's fairy tale romance, curated photos of them in Paris and Aspen and Cabo, filtered to perfection. Currently, it was displaying a slide of them clinking champagne glasses on a yacht. Ashley looked radiant. Ryan looked rich. Then the yacht froze. A sharp, static hiss cut through the speakers, causing half the guests to cover their ears. The image of the happy couple fractured, pixelating into jagged squares of color before the screen went completely black. "Technical difficulties," my father boomed his laugh, forced, waving a hand at the AV technicians near the tent entrance. "Someone get that back up. We haven't even gotten to the baby photos yet." The technicians were frantically tapping at their consoles, but I saw the panic in their body language. They were locked out. The screen did not stay black for long. It flickered once, twice, and then illuminated the garden with a stark, clinical blue light. The love story header was gone. In its place was a command prompt terminal scrolling lines of white text faster than the eye could read. A hush fell over the crowd. This was not part of the program. The scrolling stopped. The screen cleared and resolved into a clean, high-definition interface. At the top, in bold letters, Blackwood Estate. Smart Home Security Logs. "What is this?" Ashley demanded, her voice shrill. "Mom, tell them to turn it off." "I cannot," Susan hissed, her eyes darting around. "They aren't doing it." I stepped out from the shadow of the hydrangeas. I walked to the center of the grass directly in front of the screen. The blue light washed over me, casting long shadows across the tables. "You said you never got them," I said, my voice projected by the silence. "You said mail gets lost. You said packages get stolen. But data does not get lost, Ashley. It gets backed up." I raised my hand pointing at the screen. As if on command, the interface zoomed in on a specific file directory. Date: February 14th. Time 10:15 a.m. The Blackwood security system creates a backup log every time a sensor is tripped. I explained, speaking to the guests now. Not my family. I was the engineer explaining the structural failure of a bridge. It syncs to the cloud instantly. It records motion facial recognition and object identification. On the screen, a log entry highlighted in yellow. Event delivery scanned. Object FedEx. Parcel number 552. Recipient resident. This log proves the package arrived, I said. So what? Ashley snapped, standing up. Her face was flushed sweat beading on her hairline. I told you porch pirates probably took it 5 minutes later. You are boring everyone, Hannah. Sit down. Porch pirates do not have authorized biometrics, I countered. The screen shifted again. A new log appeared. Event smart lock disengaged. User ID Ashley. B. Time 10:18 a.m. 3 minutes after delivery, I said. The front door opened. The user was you. My father stood up, knocking his chair over. Hannah, that is enough. You are hacking private property. This is illegal. It is not hacking, I said, turning to face him. I am the admin. You never changed the passwords, Dad. I told you to. 3 times. I sent you the emails. But you never read my emails, do you? I looked back at the screen. The logs show you opened the door. They show you picked up the package. But that is not the interesting part. The interesting part is where you went next. The screen flashed. The text logs vanished. A video player loaded. The buffer wheel spun for a fraction of a second, and then a high-definition drone feed filled the 20-foot wall. It was not the security camera from the porch. It was footage from the perimeter security drone, another system I had installed years ago to monitor the property lines. The angle was steep, looking down into the estate's backyard. It was February. The trees were bare. The grass was brown. And there, walking across the lawn in a cashmere tracksuit, was Ashley. She was holding a blue FedEx envelope. The crowd gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the heat right out of the air. Ashley froze. She stared up at herself on the giant screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. You did not take it inside, Ashley, I said, my voice dropping lower, colder. You did not put it on the counter. You took a walk. On the screen, the Ashley in the video stopped. She looked around, checking the windows of the house. Seeing no one, she continued walking. She was not walking toward the trash cans. She was walking toward the stone fire pit at the edge of the patio. Turn it off, Susan shrieked, lunging toward the AV table. Turn it off right now! But the technicians just held up their hands helpless. They were not in control anymore. Caleb was. On the massive screen, the Ashley in the video stood by the fire pit. The flames were low, just embers really, but enough for what she needed. She did not hesitate. She did not check the contents. She just tossed the blue envelope onto the coals. The plastic bubble wrap crackled and melted. The paper caught fire. Ashley watched it burn. She did not look sad. She did not look conflicted. She pulled out her phone, recorded a 10-second video of the burning package, and then laughed. It was a silent laugh on the screen, but in the garden it was deafening. The video cut to black. In the real world, Ashley swayed. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Ryan, her fiancé, took a slow step away from her. You burned them, Susan whispered. It was not a question. It was a realization. I did not mean to, Ashley stammered, her eyes darting around the crowd, looking for an ally and escape anything. It was just, I was stressed. I wasn't thinking. You were thinking clearly enough to film it, I said. The screen changed again. This time it was not a video. It was a bank transfer log. Date February 15th. Amount $50,000. Source Hannah. Wedding, fund closed. Destination Ashley. Personal. Memo dress deposit. The crowd murmured. The air felt charged electric with the static of 100 people realizing they were witnessing a crime, not a celebration. "What is that?" James demanded, his voice trembling. "What is that account?" "That," I said, pointing to the screen, "is the savings account Grandma left for me. The one you told me did not exist. The one you said was drained years ago to pay for home repairs." I looked at my father. He was sweating profusely now, his face a mask of gray putty. "You did not drain it for repairs, Dad," I said. "You gave access to Ashley." Ashley flinched. "I needed it," she screamed, abandoning the pretense of innocence. "Do you know how much a custom gown costs? Do you know how much pressure I was under to look perfect? You did not need a wedding fund, Hannah. You were marrying a nobody in a barn. I was marrying Ryan. I needed to look the part." "So you stole it," I said. "I borrowed it." "You stole $50,000 from your sister," Ryan said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. He looked at Ashley with a kind of detached horror, like he was watching a car accident in slow motion. "You told me your parents paid for the dress." "They did," Ashley insisted, grabbing his arm. "Basically, it was family money. It is all the same pot." "It was not the same pot," I said. "That was my inheritance. That was my start. And you burned it, just like you burned my invitations." I looked at my father. He was staring at the ground, unable to meet the eyes of his investors, his friends, his wife. And that is when I realized something crucial. That is when the paper house theory finally made sense to me. For years, I thought my parents protected Ashley because they loved her more. But watching my father crumble, I realized it was not love. It was structural engineering. Ashley was the load-bearing wall of their entire image. She was the beautiful, successful, perfect daughter who validated their existence. If she was exposed, if she was revealed to be a thief, a liar, an arsonist, then the whole house fell down. They did not protect her to save her. They protected her to save themselves. They had mortgaged my happiness to pay for her facade. Robert, James croaked, turning to the VIP table. "Robert, please. This is a family misunderstanding. We can explain." Robert, the key investor, stood up. He did not look angry. He looked bored. He picked up his napkin, folded it neatly, and placed it on the table. "I do not think you can, James," he said. The screen flickered one last time. A final document appeared. A forensic audit of James's company assets. Status insolvent. Deficit $12 million. "You are broke, Dad," I said. "You have been broke for years, covering up Ashley's debts, paying for this estate. You were banking on the acquisition to save you." James sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. The party was over, the music had stopped, the food was getting cold. I looked at Susan. She was staring at the screen, her mouth opening and closing, trying to rewrite the script, trying to find the line where she was the victim. But the screen did not lie. The data did not care about her narrative. "You ruined everything," she whispered, looking at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. "You hateful, jealous little girl. You ruined everything." "No, Mom," I said, turning away. "I just turned on the lights." Robert did not shout. He did not make a scene. He simply adjusted his cufflinks and looked at my father with the kind of pity you reserve for a wounded animal that needs to be put down. "I do not think we can explain this away," James Robert said, his voice carrying easily in the silent garden. "Insolvency is not a misunderstanding. It is math. And embezzlement. That is a felony." He turned to Caleb, who had quietly emerged from the shadows near the tech booth. Caleb was not wearing a suit. He was in jeans and a black t-shirt, holding a tablet like a weapon. "You are with Veritas?" Robert asked. Lead analyst Caleb confirmed. His voice was calm, professional. "We finished the audit this morning. The books James showed you were cooked. The real deficit is $12 million. Ashley's spending alone accounts for $3 million over the last 4 years. $3 million, Ryan, the fiancé, repeated. He looked at Ashley, who was sobbing into her hands, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. "You told me you invested your trust fund. You told me you were solvent." "I am," Ashley wailed. "I have assets. I have the brand deals." "You have debt," Caleb corrected, tapping his tablet. "And you have a criminal record pending for wire fraud." Ryan took a step back, then another. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a ring box empty because the ring was currently on Ashley's finger, and set it on the table. "I cannot do this," he said. I cannot marry into this. Ryan, wait. Ashley lunged for him, grabbing his sleeve. Please. It is a mistake. Hannah manipulated the data. She is jealous. Ryan shook her off. He did not look angry anymore. He looked relieved. Goodbye, Ashley. He turned and walked out of the garden, past the stunned guests, past the caterers who had stopped serving, past the ruins of the Blackwood Dynasty. Robert followed him. The deal is dead, James, he said over his shoulder. Expect a call from our legal team regarding the due diligence fraud. One by one, the guests began to leave. It started as a trickle, embarrassed couples making excuses, checking phones, and turned into a flood. Within 10 minutes, the garden was empty. Only my family remained. My father sat slumped in his chair, staring at the table. My mother was still crying, but it was a quiet, hopeless sound now. Ashley was pacing, screaming into her phone, trying to get Ryan to answer. And me, I was standing in the middle of the wreckage, feeling clean. The humidity had broken. A cool breeze was coming off the water. Are you happy? James asked. He did not look up. His voice was a rasp. You destroyed us. Are you happy now? I did not destroy you, I said. I just turned on the lights. The rot was already there. We were your family, Susan whispered. We gave you everything. You gave me nothing, I said. You gave me a roof, and you gave me a role. The fixer. The spare. The scapegoat. But you never gave me a family. I looked at Ashley, who had stopped pacing and was glaring at me with venomous eyes. I hope it was worth it, she hissed. I hope burning us down keeps you warm at night. It will, I said. Caleb walked over to me. He did not say a word. He just took my hand. His palm was warm, dry, steady. Ready to go, he asked. Yeah, I said. I am ready. We walked out of the garden, leaving them there in the silence of their own making. We did not look back. We did not need to. We walked to his van, climbed in, and drove away. As we turned the corner, I saw the lights of the Blackwood Manor fading in the rearview mirror. It looked small from here. Insignificant. Just a house. Just a pile of bricks and mortar that had held me prisoner for 29 years. But I was not a prisoner anymore. I was the architect of my own life now. And the first thing I was going to build was a wall. A high, unscalable wall between me and them. Because sometimes the only way to save the foundation is to demolish the condemned structure standing on top of it. 3 days later, a courier knocked on my door. Not FedEx, not UPS. A private courier in a black suit holding a sealed envelope with the wax stamp of my father's law firm. I signed for it. My hand did not shake. I took it into the kitchen, placed it on the island, and opened it with a letter opener. Inside was a cashier's check. Pay to the order of Hannah Vance. Amount: $100,000. Attached was a note typed on heavy cream-colored paper. No salutation, no signature, just 2 sentences. This should cover the wedding fund and the interest. Please consider this matter closed and refrain from further public statements regarding the Veritas acquisition. I stared at the check. $100,000. It was double what Ashley had stolen. It was an apology in the only language my father spoke: currency. It was hush money. It was a bribe to stop the bleeding, to keep me from twisting the knife any deeper into his reputation. I thought about the girl I used to be. The Hannah who would have taken this check and thought, finally, they see me. They are paying me back. The Hannah who would have deposited it and used it to buy their affection for another year. But that Hannah was gone. She had burned up in the incinerator along with the invitations. I picked up the check. The paper felt crisp. Expensive. I did not deposit it. I did not cash it. I did not even hesitate. I tore it in half. Then quarters. Then eighths. I kept tearing until the check was nothing but a pile of expensive blue and white confetti on my kitchen counter. I took out my phone. I snapped a photo of the shredded check. I opened the family group chat, the one I had been muted in for years, the one where they planned vacations without me and shared photos of Ashley's perfect life. I attached the photo. I typed a message. My silence is not for sale. It is free. Consider this my parting gift. Do not contact me again. I hit send. The read receipts appeared instantly. Read by Mom, read by Dad, read by Ashley. 3 dots appeared. Someone was typing. I did not wait to see what they had to say. I tapped the group settings. I scrolled to the bottom. Leave group. I pressed it. The chat vanished. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full. It was heavy with peace. New Year's Eve arrived wrapped in snow. Real snow this time. Not the fake stuff my mother used to spray on the windows. I was at Caleb's parents' house in Vermont. The house smelled like yeast rolls and wood smoke. There was no marquee tent, no string quartet, just a lopsided tree in the corner, and a fire crackling in a brick hearth that had actual soot on it. Caleb's mother, Martha, handed me a mug of hot cider. She squeezed my shoulder as she walked past. No words, just a squeeze. A silent acknowledgement that I was there, that I was wanted, that I belonged. It was such a small gesture. But after 29 years of starving for it, it felt like a feast. "You okay?" Caleb asked, coming up beside me. He wrapped an arm around my waist, pulling me into his side. I leaned my head on his shoulder. "Yeah, I am." "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "The money, the family?" I looked out the window at the snow falling in the dark. I thought about the Blackwood Manor, probably dark and silent tonight, the paper house finally collapsed under the weight of its own lies. I thought about Ashley likely spending New Year's alone, scrolling through old photos of a life that was not real. And I thought about myself. Standing here. Warm. Safe. Loved. "No," I said. "I do not regret a thing." The countdown started on the TV. 10. 9. 8. I looked at Caleb. I looked at his family laughing, arguing over who got the last pig in a blanket. I was not the structural engineer of the Blackwood Dynasty anymore. I was just Hannah. And for the first time in my life, the foundation under my feet did not have a single crack. 3, 2, 1. "Happy New Year," Caleb whispered, kissing me. "Happy New Year," I said. I had cleared the wreckage. I had burned the rot. And here, in the clean, quiet space I had made for myself, something real was finally beginning to grow. If you have ever had to burn a bridge to save yourself, share this story. You are not alone.